Princess Saliara stood at the window of her royal chambers and watched her husband work in the garden below. Daniel Carter knelt in the dirt, his hands covered in soil as he carefully planted seeds in neat rows. He looked up at the purple sky and smiled at something only he could see. She turned away with a sigh of disappointment. 3 months ago, her father had announced her marriage to a human. Not a warrior, not a scientist, not even a diplomat. A farmer, an agricultural consultant from the small blue planet called Earth. The Volanti Empire ruled over 200 star systems. Their technology could reshape planets. Their warriors had conquered species that humans had never even heard of. And the emperor had given his only daughter to a man who grew vegetables for a living. It was meant to be a trade agreement. Earth had resources the empire wanted. In exchange, the humans asked for protection and knowledge. The marriage was supposed to be symbolic, a gesture of friendship between two very different worlds. But Saliara knew the truth. This was her punishment. 2 years ago, she had publicly disagreed with her father about his treatment of a conquered species. She had called him cruel in front of the entire court. He had not forgotten. He never forgot. Now she was married to Daniel Carter, and the whole galaxy laughed at her behind her back. She walked down to the garden, her silver robes trailing behind her on the stone path. Daniel looked up as she approached. His face was plain and ordinary. Brown hair, brown eyes, a gentle smile that never seemed to fade. "Good morning," he said. "The soil here is excellent. I think we could grow enough food to feed the entire palace staff if we expanded the garden." "We have machines that produce food," Saliara said coldly. "We do not need to dig in the dirt like primitive creatures." Daniel nodded slowly. "That is true. But there is something special about food that comes from the ground. It tastes different. Better, I think." She stared at him. On her world, manual labor was for the lower classes. The fact that her husband enjoyed it was embarrassing beyond words. "The council meeting is in 1 hour," she said. "You should clean yourself and dress appropriately." "Of course." Daniel stood up and brushed the dirt from his simple clothes. "I will be ready." He walked past her toward the palace, and she noticed something strange. 2 watcher statues stood at the garden entrance. They were ancient things, carved from black stone thousands of years ago. Every Volanti temple and palace had them. They were said to be the eyes of the gods, always watching, always judging as Daniel passed between them. Saliara could have sworn the statues turned their heads slightly to follow him. She blinked and looked again. The statues were still, motionless, exactly as they had always been. She shook her head. She was tired. That was all. The council meeting was the same as every other council meeting. Old nobles argued about trade routes and military positions. Saliara sat in her designated chair and tried to look interested. Daniel sat beside her, quiet and attentive, saying nothing. Lord Creveth, a fat noble with too much wine in his blood, leaned across the table and smiled at Daniel. "Tell me, human," he said loudly, "what is it like to be married so far above your station? Do you feel grateful? Do you wake up every morning and thank the gods for your good fortune?" The room went quiet. Everyone turned to watch. Daniel smiled politely. "I feel very fortunate," he said. "The princess is kind, and your world is beautiful." Lord Creveth laughed. "Kind? She barely looks at you. Everyone knows this marriage is a joke. You are a pet, human. A curiosity. Nothing more." Saliara felt her face grow hot with shame. Not for Daniel. For herself. Because Creveth was speaking the truth that everyone already believed. She waited for Daniel to react, to defend himself, to show some spark of pride or anger, but he simply nodded and said, "Perhaps you are right, my lord." Lord Creveth laughed even louder. "He agrees. The human agrees, He is worthless. At least he knows his place. Daniel stood up slowly. If you will excuse me, I think I will take some air. Please continue without me. He walked toward the door, and once again, Celiara saw something impossible. The great hall had 12 Watcher statues lining the walls. As Daniel walked between them, every single statue seemed to turn. Their stone eyes followed him across the room. Their ancient faces seemed to track his movement with something that looked almost like reverence that no one else seemed to notice. They were too busy laughing at Lord Creveth's jokes that Daniel reached the door and paused. He looked back at Celiara, and for just a moment, she saw something in his brown eyes. Something old. Something deep. Something that did not belong in the face of a simple farmer. Then he was gone. Celiara sat frozen in her chair. Her heart was beating fast, though she did not understand why. That night, she could not sleep. She walked through the palace corridors, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. She found herself standing before the oldest Watcher statue in the palace. It had been carved before her civilization had learned to travel between stars. No one knew who had made it or why. She stared at its stone face. What do you see in him? She whispered. Why do you watch him? The statue did not answer. Of course, it did not. It was only stone. But somewhere deep in the palace, she heard Daniel's voice. He was singing softly in an unfamiliar language. The words were strange and ancient. They made her skin tingle and her soul ache for something she could not name. She leaned against the cold wall and closed her eyes. Her husband was not what he seemed. She was certain of that now. But she had no idea what he actually was, and that frightened her more than anything in the galaxy. The message arrived at midnight. The Kreth Dominion had attacked a border world called Valora. Thousands of civilians were trapped. The Emperor needed someone to represent the Empire and organize the evacuation. He chose Celiara. She suspected this was another punishment. The border worlds were dangerous. The Kreth were savage warriors who showed no mercy to their enemies. Sending his daughter into such chaos was either a test or a death sentence. She packed her things and prepared her ship. As she walked toward the landing platform, she found Daniel waiting for her with a small bag over his shoulder. What are you doing? She asked. Coming with you, he said simply. There will be refugees. They will need help with food and shelter. I can be useful. She almost laughed. The Kreth are attacking. There will be soldiers, weapons, death. This is not a garden. I know, Daniel said, but I would like to come anyway. If you will allow it. She should have said no. She should have left him behind where he would be safe. But something in his calm eyes made her hesitate. Fine, she said, but stay out of my way. The journey to Valora took 2 days. When they arrived, Celiara saw the destruction from orbit. Cities burned. Smoke rose in thick columns. Ships flew in every direction as people tried to escape. They landed at a refugee camp outside the capital city. Thousands of Valorans huddled in makeshift tents. Children cried. The wounded screamed. The air smelled of blood and fear. Celiara began organizing the military response. She contacted her commanders. She arranged defensive positions. She did what a princess of the Empire was trained to do. But Daniel did something different. He walked into the crowd of refugees and started working. He helped set up tents. He carried water. He sat with frightened children and told them stories until they stopped crying. He moved through the camp like a calm wind, and everywhere he went, people seemed to breathe a little easier. Celiara watched him from a distance. She did not understand how one man could make such a difference. But she could see the results with her own eyes. An old Valoran priest approached Daniel as he bandaged a young girl's wounded arm. The priest's eyes were wide with wonder. You carry the old light, the priest whispered. I can see it in you. Who are you?" Daniel smiled gently. "I am just a man trying to help." "No," the priest said. "You are more than that. The stories speak of beings like you, the ones who came before, the ones who made everything." Daniel placed his hand on the priest's shoulder. "Rest now, Father. You have worked hard today. Let me take care of things for a while." The priest nodded slowly, his eyes still full of wonder. He walked away in a daze, mumbling prayers under his breath. Ciliara approached Daniel when the priest was gone. What did he mean? What old light? Daniel shrugged. Old people see things that are not there. He is tired and scared. That is all. She wanted to believe him, but she remembered the statues. She remembered the singing in the ancient language. She remembered the look in his eyes when Lord Creveth insulted him. Before she could ask more questions, alarms started screaming across the camp. The Creth had found them. Soldiers poured over the hills surrounding the camp. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Their war cries echoed across the valley. Ciliara drew her blade and prepared to fight. Her guards formed a protective circle around the refugees. But there were too many enemies. They would all die here. "Stay behind me," she ordered Daniel. "When the fighting starts, run for the ships." Daniel did not move. He stood perfectly still, watching the approaching army. "Daniel!" Ciliara shouted. "Did you hear me? Run." He shook his head slowly. "No, I do not think I will." Then he stepped forward, past Ciliara, past the guards. He walked toward the Creth army with his hands at his sides. "Daniel!" Ciliara screamed. "What are you doing?" He did not answer. He just kept walking. The Creth soldiers saw him coming. They raised their weapons. They fired. The energy blast stopped in midair. They hung frozen, glowing like trapped stars, just inches from Daniel's face. He raised one hand, and the entire Creth army stopped moving. Every soldier, every weapon, every war machine. They froze like statues carved from ice. The silence was absolute. Daniel turned back to Ciliara. His eyes were glowing with soft golden light. His ordinary face suddenly looked ancient and terrible and beautiful all at once. "I am sorry," he said quietly. His voice echoed strangely, as if it came from everywhere at once. "I hoped I would not have to show you this." Ciliara dropped her sword. Her hands were shaking. Her entire body was shaking. "What are you?" she whispered. Daniel looked at her with eyes that had seen the birth of stars. "I will explain everything," he said. "But not here. Not now. First, let me save these people. Then we will talk." He turned back to the frozen army and waved his hand. The soldiers vanished. All of them. In the blink of an eye, they were simply gone. Ciliara fell to her knees in the dirt. Behind her, the refugees stared in stunned silence. The simple farmer she had despised for 3 months had just made an entire army disappear, and she had no idea what that meant for her, for the Empire or for the galaxy. The journey back to the capital took 2 days. Ciliara spent most of that time in her cabin, staring at the wall and trying to understand what she had seen. Daniel gave her space. He waited patiently, as he always did. On the second night, she finally went to find him. He was sitting alone in the observation deck, watching the stars drift past the windows. "Tell me," she said. "Tell me everything." Daniel nodded slowly. He gestured to the empty chair beside him, and she sat down. "Long ago," he began, "before your people existed, before most species in this galaxy were born, there were others. We called ourselves the Architects. We were the first intelligent beings to walk among the stars." Ciliara listened in silence. "We were powerful," Daniel continued. "More powerful than you can imagine. We could create worlds. We could shape matter with our thoughts. We could live forever if we chose to. For billions of years, we explored the universe. We were alone, and we were lonely. So you created life, Celiara whispered. Yes, we seeded thousands of worlds with the beginnings of life. We watched civilizations grow. We guided them, protected them, and eventually they began to worship us as gods. Celiara thought of the temples on her world, the statues, the prayers, the ancient texts that spoke of divine beings who had created everything. The Volanthi gods, she said. They are real. They are you. Daniel smiled sadly. Yes and no. We were never gods. We were just older, more powerful, but not wiser, not better. We made terrible mistakes. What kind of mistakes? We let the worship corrupt us. Some of my brothers and sisters began to enjoy the power. They demanded sacrifices. They punished those who disobeyed. They became the tyrants that your religions warned about. Others became distant and cold. They stopped caring about the lives they had created. Daniel looked out at the stars. His eyes were heavy with ancient grief. I was different. I grew tired of being worshipped. I wanted to understand what it meant to be mortal, to live a short life, to work with my hands, to love and lose and struggle like the beings we had created. So you came to Earth, Celiara said. Yes, humanity was young. They had no knowledge of the architects. They did not worship us because they did not know we existed. I could live among them as an ordinary person. I could experience life without the burden of divinity. How long were you there? Daniel smiled. A very long time. I watched your ancestors discover fire. I helped them plant their first crops. I lived 1,000 different lives, always moving on before anyone noticed that I did not age. Celiara's mind reeled. The simple farmer who grew vegetables in her garden was older than her entire civilization. Why did you agree to marry me? She asked. Daniel turned to look at her. His eyes were gentle and warm. When the Galactic Council proposed a marriage, I saw it as another chance to live an ordinary life. A new world. A new experience. And when I met you, I sensed something special. What do you mean? You are proud. Sometimes too proud. But beneath that pride, there is kindness. I saw how you treated your servants with respect when no one was watching. I saw how you argued with your father to protect the conquered species. You have a good heart, Celiara. That is rare in any species. She did not know what to say. For 3 months, she had treated him like a burden, an embarrassment, a punishment from her father. And all that time, he had been watching her with ancient eyes and seeing something she did not know she possessed. Why did you not tell me sooner? She asked. Because I wanted you to know me as Daniel, not as an architect, not as a god, just as a man. I wanted to earn your respect through my actions, not my power. Celiara remembered all the times she had ignored him, dismissed him, let others insult him without defending him. I treated you terribly, she said quietly. You treated me as you believed I deserved to be treated. I do not blame you for that. Your entire life, you were taught that humans were weak and unimportant. It takes time to unlearn such things. The ship's warning system chimed softly. They were approaching the capital world. What happens now? Celiara asked. You cannot hide what you are anymore. The soldiers on Valora saw everything. The refugees saw everything. Word will spread. Daniel's expression grew serious. Yes, I expect the priests have already sensed my awakening. They will want answers. They will want power. My father will demand to know who you really are. I know. I will tell them the truth. I am tired of hiding. Celiara reached out and took his hand. It was a small gesture, but it was the first time she had ever touched him willingly. I do not know what to think about all of this, she admitted. I do not know if I can accept that my husband is a god. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. I am not asking you to accept anything right now. I am only asking you to give me a chance to show you who I truly am. Not the power, not the ancient memories. Just me. She looked at him. The simple farmer with dirt under his fingernails and stars in his eyes. I will try, she said. The ship descended toward the capital, and below them, chaos was already beginning. The temples were glowing. The priests were gathering, and the emperor was waiting with fire in his eyes. But for this one quiet moment, they were just two people holding hands in the starlight, and that was enough. The Grand Temple of the Volanthi Empire was the largest religious building in the known galaxy. It could hold 1 million people. Today, every seat was filled, and billions more watched through screens across 1,000 worlds. Emperor Vaeloth sat on his golden throne at the center of the temple. His face was carved from cold stone. His eyes burned with barely contained rage. High Priest Mordrin stood beside him, dressed in ceremonial robes covered with ancient symbols. He was an old man with hungry eyes and a cruel smile. Celiara walked through the massive doors with Daniel at her side. The crowd fell silent as they entered. 1 million eyes turned to watch them. So, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the temple. The farmer has secrets. Daniel said nothing. He walked calmly toward the throne, his simple clothes a stark contrast to the golden splendor around him. Stop there, Mordrin commanded. You stand before the Emperor and the High Council of the Faith. You will show proper respect. Daniel stopped. He looked at Mordrin with calm, patient eyes. The stories from Valora have spread across the galaxy, the Emperor continued. They say you froze an army with a wave of your hand. They say you made 1,000 soldiers disappear. They say you are something more than human. The stories are true, Daniel said simply. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Then tell us what you are, Mordrin demanded. Tell us where your power comes from. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried to every corner of the temple without effort. I am one of the architects, the beings your religions call the first gods. I am older than your son. I was already ancient when your ancestors crawled from the sea. The silence was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Mordrin's face twisted with greed. The architects. The creators. You went silent thousands of years ago. We prayed. We sacrificed. We begged for your return. And all this time you were hiding among the humans? I was not hiding. I was living. There's a difference. The Emperor leaned forward. If you are truly an architect, then you must restore the connection. The temples have been dark for millennia. Our prayers go unanswered. Give us back the power we once had. No, Daniel said quietly. The word echoed like thunder. No? Mordrin stepped forward, his face red with anger. You dare refuse the Emperor? You dare deny the faithful their birthright? The architects stopped answering prayers because worship was destroying you. You became dependent on our power instead of building your own. You sacrificed lives to please us instead of protecting them. We made you weak by being strong. That is not your decision to make, the Emperor growled. You owe us. You created us. You are responsible for us. I am responsible for my own choices, not yours. Mordrin smiled a cold, cruel smile. He gestured to the guards standing near Celiara. Perhaps you need motivation. Seize the princess. The guards grabbed Celiara's arms. She struggled, but they were too strong. Let her go, Daniel said. His voice was still calm, but something had changed. The air grew heavy. The ground began to vibrate. Give us what we want, Mordrin said, or we will hurt your precious wife. She's only a political tool anyway. Her life means nothing compared to the power you can give us." Daniel turned to look at Celiara. Their eyes met, and she saw something in him that she had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper. Something infinite. "You threatened the woman I chose," Daniel said softly. "That was unwise." He raised his hand, and the temple shook. The ancient stones groaned. The golden decorations rattled on the walls. Then the Watcher statues moved. Every statue in the temple. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them across the entire planet. Millions of them across the galaxy. They all moved at the same moment. They turned. They stepped down from their pedestals. And they knelt, every single one, bowing toward Daniel. "The Watchers," Mordrin whispered, his face pale with shock. "They were architects too." "My brothers and sisters," Daniel said. "They chose to sleep and observe. They have been watching your civilizations for eons, waiting to see if you were worthy of our gifts. They answered to me. The guards holding Celiara released her and fell to their knees. They could not help themselves. Their bodies moved without their permission. Mordrin collapsed. The Emperor collapsed. Every priest, every noble, every soldier in the temple fell to their knees and pressed their foreheads to the stone floor. Daniel stood, alone in the center of a million kneeling figures. His eyes glowed with golden light. Power radiated from him like heat from a star. "I came to your galaxy seeking peace," he said, and his voice echoed across dimensions. "I asked for nothing but the chance to live a simple life. But you threatened my wife. You tried to use her life as a weapon against me." The temple walls cracked. The ceiling trembled. "I could destroy this world with a thought. I could erase your entire civilization from existence. But I choose mercy. I always choose mercy. That is what separates the truly powerful from the merely strong." He lowered his hand and the shaking stopped. The pressure faded. The Watcher statues returned to their places and went still. Daniel walked to Celiara and helped her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. She shook her head. She could not speak. She had just watched a god humble an empire for her sake. Daniel took her hand and led her toward the exit. The crowd parted before them like water before a ship. At the door, Daniel paused and looked back at the Emperor, who still knelt on the floor. "Do not threaten her again," Daniel said quietly. "I will not ask twice." Then they walked out into the sunlight, leaving a million terrified believers in their wake. 1 month had passed since the temple incident. The galaxy had not stopped talking about it. Every species in the known universe now knew that the architects were real, that they still existed, that one of them had married a Volanti princess and humbled an empire for her sake. Delegations arrived daily at the palace. Kings and queens from distant worlds. Religious leaders desperate for guidance. Scientists begging to study Daniel's power. Soldiers offering their armies in exchange for his favor. Daniel refused them all. He spent his days the same way he always had. Working in the garden. Helping refugees on distant worlds. Teaching farmers better ways to grow food. He wanted nothing to do with worship or politics or power. Celiara watched him from her window, just as she had done months ago. But now she saw him differently. The man kneeling in the dirt was not weak. He was the strongest being in the universe, choosing to be humble. She went down to the garden to find him. "The ambassador from the Kreth Dominion is waiting," she said. "He wants to apologize for the attack on Valora. He is terrified you will destroy his people." Daniel looked up and smiled. Dirt covered his hands. Sweat dampened his simple clothes. "Tell him I accept his apology. Tell him I have no interest in revenge. Tell him to go home and be better to his people." Celiara nodded. She had delivered similar messages dozens of times this month. Daniel forgave everyone. He threatened no one. He asked for nothing. May I ask you something? She said, always. She sat down on the grass beside him. You could have anything in existence. Any planet. Any treasure. Any power. Why do you choose this? Why do you choose to dig in the dirt like a common farmer? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He picked up a small seed and held it in his palm. Do you know what I have learned in my billions of years of existence? Selyara shook her head. Power is meaningless. I have had more power than you can imagine. I have created worlds and destroyed them. I have watched civilizations rise and fall, and none of it made me happy. He planted the seed carefully in the soil. But this small act of creation, putting a seed in the ground and watching it grow, feeding someone who is hungry, comforting someone who is afraid. These small things bring me more joy than all the power in the universe. Selyara looked at the neat rows of vegetables, the simple garden that an architect tended with his own hands. I spent 3 months hating you, she said quietly. I thought you were weak. I thought you were beneath me. I was ashamed to call you my husband. I know. I was wrong. I was so very wrong. Daniel reached over and took her hand. His fingers were rough with soil. You were not wrong to judge me by what you saw. You were wrong to believe that strength means cruelty, that power means dominion, that a person's value comes from their status. These are lies your culture taught you. It is not your fault that you believe them. Selyara felt tears building in her eyes. How can you forgive me so easily? Because holding anger is exhausting. Because revenge only creates more pain. Because I have seen what hatred does to individuals and civilizations. It destroys everything it touches. He squeezed her hand gently. And because I love you, Selyara. I loved you before you loved me. I saw the kindness in your heart before you knew it was there. I have been waiting for you to see yourself the way I see you. The tears fell down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. I have a choice to offer you, Daniel said. I can make you forget everything you have learned about me. I can erase my true nature from your memory and leave. You can return to your old life. Your father will find you a proper Volanthi husband. You will never have to think about the strange human farmer again. And the other choice? You stay with me, not as a princess married to a god, but as a partner to a man who wants to live simply. I will not rule empires. I will not answer prayers. I will grow food and help people and try to make the universe a little better, one small act at a time. Selyara looked at him, the ancient being wearing the face of an ordinary man, the god who chose to kneel in the dirt, the most powerful creature in existence, asking her permission to love her. I choose you, she said. I choose the farmer. I choose the simple life. I choose everything you are. Daniel smiled. It was the same gentle smile he'd worn since the day they met. But now she understood what it meant. It was the smile of someone who had found peace after billions of years of searching. Then let me teach you something, he said. Put your hands in the soil. Feel the life waiting to grow. This is what matters, Selyara. Not thrones or temples or worship. Just this. Just life. She knelt beside him and pushed her hands into the warm earth. It felt strange at first, dirty, primitive. But then she felt something else. A pulse, a rhythm, the heartbeat of the world beneath her fingers. I feel it, she whispered. Good, now plant. Together, they worked in silence. A princess and a god, kneeling in the dirt, planting seeds that would feed people they would never meet. Later that day, a visiting dignitary walked through the palace gardens with a local servant. Who are those two? The dignitary asked, pointing at the couple working among the vegetables. The servant shrugged. Just the princess and her husband. He is human, I think. They keep to themselves mostly. Nice people. The dignitary watched them for a moment. The woman laughed at something the man said. He kissed her forehead gently. They looked perfectly ordinary above them, invisible to mortal eyes. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter. The Watcher statues across the galaxy stood a little straighter. The universe itself acknowledged the choice Daniel had made. But Daniel did not notice any of it. He was too busy teaching his wife how to grow tomatoes.